And now I'll invite to join us on the stage Minister Sutt again, Isabella Groegor-Cechowicz, and Romana Vlahutin, who is Ambassador at Large for Connectivity, European External Action Service. Please take your seats. Mr. Sutt, Romana, and Isabella here at the third seat. And this discussion will be moderated by Üllar Jaaksoo, the founder of Greenergy data centers. And from the central stage, I got a word that we should finish this by 16:40. At 16:45, there are closing remarks, so we all have a chance to go there. But now, here is our discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen here in Tallinn and everywhere else following us in the connected world. This panel will focus on multiple layers, the aspects between the smart and trusted connectivity, and it's all essential building elements to build it. The vision of the smart connectivity is to expand digital components across the key infrastructure, which will support new business models and technologies. It is about making our investments in energy and transport in connectivity future-proof. As we say, money talks, but what value should the money represent and what value should money look for when investing and make the changes? That will be also our topic. We heard today many times that future is digital. I would argue our present is already digital and our future is at digital risk, and we should do something about to minimize this risk. And let me introduce to our panelists, Minister Andres Sutt, Minister of Entrepreneurship and Information Technology of Estonia. Prior to assuming public office, he has extensive experience in central banking, as I know, and the financial sector, having worked for the Estonian Central Bank for over 20 years, 9 of which as the Vice President of the Central Bank, is correct. And during his career, he has been involved in solving all main financial crises of the century, having worked for the European Stability Mechanism in Luxembourg and at the International Monetary Fund in Washington. We have a lot of experience how to manage money. Ambassador at Large for Connectivity, European External Action Service, Madam Romana Vlahutin. We also have Isabella Groegor-Cechowicz, Vice President of Middle East and Africa for Amazon Web Services at the public sector, and just recently spoke to us Taavi Veskimägi, the CEO of the Elering. Taavi has also previously held the position of Minister of Finance and has been elected to the Estonian Parliament. There is a lot of experience here, and let us make the benefit out of it. I will start from the introduction questions to Mr. Sutt. First of all, thank you very much for the very good point that you made about the use cases, that connectivity is nothing else than serving our citizens and customers with the better use cases. But a couple hours ago, we also said that it's a bridging the gap in the cybersecurity financing. How financing could affect the corporate digital responsibility is my question. In other words, who should lead and monitor sufficient cybersecurity financing for all stakeholders?
Yeah, thank you, Üllar. I think on the corporate side, and it applies equally on the public and political spectrum, who should lead is always the C-level. It has to be on the agenda of a management board of any company. It should be on the agenda of governments and also in public authorities. I think we need to, like we discussed in another panel, we need to raise this awareness of a changed cyber landscape and the more hostile nature we are facing. And that's why if you want to change anything in any organization, the change in a culture starts from the top. And this is sort of my simple answer. You can't make the IT officer accountable for overlooking the cyber side if there hasn't been a proper management attention to the topic. And this has to be allocated a sufficient management time in any organization, I believe.
Thank you for that very valid point. But in the EU, we have a lot of frameworks enabling us to improve our procedures and processes. We learn from each other. But Madam Ambassador Vlahutin, how to engage on trusted connectivity with the developing world, the new markets, because we don't live in the Club Med closed environment, we live in the connected world.
Certainly we don't. and my job is foreign and security policy. One thing that has been visibly clear in the last maybe 10 to 15 years is that the nature of power has changed. And that change came with the digital revolution, which also has created new relations and new interdependencies that will need to be managed. We have been working a lot on these concepts, and I'll give you some information on how we are tackling it. But from sitting in Brussels and trying to find the best model of engaging with the world, especially with developing markets, there are at least 4 elements that are important for us to be, I would even dare to say, a leader in trusted connectivity globally. The first one has been mentioned many, many times, that's values. It's a profoundly political category, and I think it calls for a deep engagement on the discussion on values, and some of them for us are absolutely non-negotiable. The basic human freedoms is something that we would never even consider discussing in that sense. The second one is codification. You need to code those values somehow, because you also need, in order to have smooth connectivity, you need to give them some mechanics. And this is what we in the EU have been doing for many, many decades. It also helps you to become more predictable, easier to understand, and then it generates more trust. The third element is resilience. I think that our citizens are absolutely aware also of the risks, and we have to make sure to provide all the necessary checks and balances. And then finally, you said something that will go throughout everything that I have to say today. It's money talks. So it's absolutely important, necessary, and valuable to engage in discussions, but you also have to engage and invest in real terms through projects that are strategic, that are large scale, and that are transformational for those countries. And that is easier said than done, but I think that is really the only way to go to really materialize in a way of what we are talking about when we talk about trusted connectivity.
Thank you very much. We have 4 things to look at very carefully and make sure that we have systems behind that. But we have Isabella here, who has, you told me, 25 years of the IT experience, at least. And but the AWS has earned the trust of millions of users, both consumers, companies, but also governments. And but what's the secret? How you earn the trust and put something of these AWS learnings to be used in order to achieve overall trusted connectivity?
Yeah, so look, I think first of all, when we look at and our culture is trust is key in our company. We have 16 leadership principles. We recently added 2, which are also very applicable to our discussion here today. And the one that we start with is always customer obsession. So customer obsession means we start with the customer, we start with their perspective, with their needs, and then we went backwards into either innovation or into our services and whatever we have in mind there. And that is also guiding it. That also means that we are working always vigorously to earn and also retain the customer trust, because that is the base in our business. I think the second part is it's super important that when we look at this smart connectivity, that the citizens in the end who are ultimately benefiting from the infrastructures are gonna be really convinced and trust the infrastructure and see that as a valid point. And trust can be displayed in many ways. It can be about that services are available, or it can be also about the personal data is protected. So for us, building trust goes into 2 layers. One layer is the infrastructure that is behind AWS, so what is our cloud? This is something where we need to prove that to our customers every day that this is highly available, that they can rely on the services that they are using, that they are available and that they are secure, that they have disconnected regions, that they have isolated regions that are working with the data in terms of the data is stored safely in those regions. And then the second layer is again the question of the data that our customers put into the cloud, making sure that customers also understand that they can encrypt them, that they always retain ownership and also always retain control over the data. So I think these two layers and getting up every day and getting better and better in that space, that earns our trust with customers.
Last time I looked at the clouds, there was no servers. All the servers actually serving us are somewhere on the ground, and they usually not even offline. They're connected to something always. It's called energy. Taavi, my next question is to you, that be it smart or trusted connectivity, there is always dependency from the energy, and how this all requirements for the smart infrastructure are actually affecting the energy sector, and what are the trends, what entrepreneurs building up digital connectivity should actually watch in the energy sector to have as limitations, or in other words, as opportunities.
Thank you for your question. I first like to also come to the trust issue, because as I said, that this trust is really the key word in our world as well. And basically energy policy is not value free, and you basically can rely only those partners with whom you share with same values. And this is basically why we say that the power generator in Finland or power generator in Latvia as same as generator in Estonia for Estonian consumer security of supply, because we trust Finns, we trust Latvians. But same time, as you, at least Estonians very well know, that basically we have such large master plan that we like to get desynchronized Baltic power system from Russia. And this is not due to the fact that Russian power system is not reliable in technical terms. It's I think, the world's most reliable power system in technical terms, but we not share same values. Those guys who another side of the Lake of Peipus, that why we say that the shared values and interconnectivities are so much related with each other, and basically you can be interconnected only with those and who you share the same values. Otherwise, you anyway couldn't rely on them, and you basically have to back up yourself and do all those investments only for your own, and this is definitely a huge economic burden.
Thank you. Minister Sutt, Estonia, sometimes called also as a digital nation, is also a member of the digitally leading countries called Digital 9 previously, now it's called Digital Nation. There are more countries who are sharing the values, sharing the concept of digitalization, who are not all from the EU. And this club, I know, has the yearly gatherings and ongoing dialogues, but my question is the smart and trusted connectivity also topic at this club, and how we could use those other nations, or members of the digital nations, 9 countries as I understand there are, to promote even more this trusted connectivity around the world, because that helps just to grow the market of the shared values.
I start from the value point, because I think this is really central to everything. And as it has been discussed here in different panels and speeches today, what we really need to work for and ensure is that we will get also the rules-based world order in a digital domain. We are accustomed to having it in a trade, in finance, and in many other things, even though in the recent years there has clearly been, in my opinion, sort of a way backwards. And I very much share with you that we need to offer our positive narrative, how we, based on our shared values, carry the world forward. And of course, But trust and connectivity is by definition there, because if we look at and I just jump back to the cyber domain, then no cyber attack is really domestic. It is always cross-border, and that's why we need these shared values, shared collaboration, and this is where we certainly also discuss in digitally like-minded nations group. And again, I mean, it is an European issue, but it's equally an issue around the globe, and that's why we should, and we are certainly from Estonia, we are very much in favor of advocating for the trusted frameworks and to make or to restate or to instate the rules-based framework for a digital world as well.
Taavi has something to comment or ask from you on that.
Yes, I just like to make a comment that unfortunately this is not only case there that if there are maybe not shared values, that there are no mutual trust, but I see this is also inside of European Union, and why I raised this issue that if you talk about data operability, which concerns energy data, maybe someone aware, and this is also as a case study pointed out our smart connectivity vision paper in 3Cs initiative, that we try to establish the energy data bridge alliance that basically make also European national energy retail markets more connected and really lower barriers to enter into those national markets companies from other countries in European Union. But unfortunately also inside the EU, where we really have a shared values, basically many countries who are not accept this kind of data sharing, that this is not okay, that I know Swedish energy consumption data is available for Estonian energy service provider, or such kind of cases, that I think we should still very much work also inside the union to make this data interoperability a case where we can develop a market.
Taavi, that brings me to the very good point. Ambassador, may I ask on that short dialogue here, your comment, please give us a bit bigger picture and the longer perspective, what has EU been doing on connectivity in general, and why we hear that there are, even inside of us, still some challenge opportunities, and what are the opportunities if we do so, and even more important maybe, what are the risks if we do not engage?
Thanks a lot. It's really, in a way, a complex discussion, because for us, when we talk about connectivity, we talk about energy, we talk about transport, we talk about digital, and we talk about human connectivity. So there are overlapping pillars, and sort of we focused on two key principles. One is sustainability, so that every investment in infrastructure has to be sustainable in social, environmental, and fiscal way. The second one is a level playing field, so that we work towards creating or ensuring a level playing field for all our businesses. So trying to sort of sort out this complex matter, we started looking at numbers. And it's really interesting when you look at the financial cycle of the last commission from 2013 to 2018, which coincides actually with Belt and Road cycle, or the beginning of Belt and Road was in 2013. It turned out that the European Union and its member states have disbursed basically the same amount of money in grants to developing countries as Belt and Road projects in loans. But somehow the return is different. At least the political return is different. So we're thinking very hard on what has caused this distortion, if you wish, and how do we tackle it. And there is a common agreement, not only within us in the European Union, but I think within G7 and other democracies that we engage with, that we really need to not even up our game, but if you wish, adopt our game a bit. And we have to understand the economic, the political, and the security consequences of investment in infrastructure. The gap is huge. There are assessments that in the world there is around 3 trillion needed every year, 3 trillion of investment needed every year. That's massive amount of money. On digital, very interesting numbers as well. Around 45% of the planet is not connected at all. So that is an immense opportunity. By 2030, there will be 2.5 billion new users of internet, which can generate around 2 trillion impact on GDP. And we are now at a critical moment, a lot has been discussed today. Those who will agree the rules will also lead in the next 20 to 30 years. And we want to be sure that we have a say in understanding how this interdependency will be managed, and that we are engaged based on our values and based on our belief in sustainability and a level playing field. There is a lot at stake because when you think about it a bit, it's also connectivity creates trade routes. Connectivity creates value chains. It defines the environment in which you operate. And it's in our interest, it's in our political and our economic interest and our security interest to really get engaged at a very sort of high level.
Thank you very much. And I think this 45% you mentioned is not all connected. Brings me right to the next question to Isabella, to you, is that technical giants, they actually are also lighthouses. They show the example, they lead the way. Basically 45% still not connected, is opportunity to connect them in the right way, in the trusted and sustainable way. And my question is how global tech giants can actually impact the behavior of the consumers and companies following the corporate digital responsibility principles like left no one behind, make it as small as possible ecological footprint, how your companies in size like AWS could actually make a change here.
Yeah, and I think there are many aspects, as you already pointed out in that field. But when I think about sustainability and looking at the footprint, there are actions that I think we all need to take, and that also I can only speak for the example how we are taking those actions. To your point, as being a tech company that is by default using a lot of energy, just also fueling our data centers. So I think the 4 actions that are coming to mind is setting goals, is investing, is innovating, and it is collaborating. And giving you a couple of examples here out of that one is when we look at setting goals, that is how you can measure. This is how you can hold yourself accountable, and this is also what aligns the companies and also aligned our company across all our teams. And in 2019 we have co-founded the Climate Pledge, which is a commitment to be net zero carbon by 2040, which is then going to be 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. And we are also committed to become fully renewable energy powered by 2030. Currently on the way to probably bring that forward, and we are doing a lot of things there in the space of innovation, which I'm going to touch on the data centers, but also using electric fleets for deliveries, and also for reducing the packaging, etc. So that's the part on setting the goals, and measuring ourselves and measuring the success and our progress. And the second one is investing, is when you look at, we want to be powered fully by renewable energy by 2030. That means we invest in renewable energy projects. We have hundreds of those projects across globally because we are by default now, since beginning of the year, the biggest global buyer of renewable energy on a global scale. And this is where we see the responsibility also to run and engage in those projects. And we see that this is sending the right signal together with our climate pledge, where we have about 100 signatories who are with us, who are committed also to be neutral by 2040. And this is also setting, from our perspective, the tone for the success of businesses for the future. Now, on the innovation side, as we are custom built, we can innovate in our data centers. We can innovate on the design. We can innovate on the design of the hardware to also capture the benefits out of the energy part. And finally, on the collaborations, it is for many of us, it is, for example, the climate pledge, but also the climate neutral data center pact, which is a safe regulatory initiative at EU level that we also have signed with many other data centers operators and associations. That means that collaboration is getting more and more important to help everybody to get to a carbon neutral footprint. I think that's just outlining the couple of actions that we are taking.
That brings us almost to the end of our panel. We have another few minutes left, but there is one question left, and that's my personal question to all of you, and maybe it's more like a yes or no type of question. We talk about corporate social responsibilities. That has been now the general practice of most of the companies and audited by the auditors. The latest trend is now the corporate digital responsibility, and that's like a separate subject to the social responsibility. But maybe the letter C there, what stands for the corporate, we should change to the common digital responsibility, and making sure that this triangle of the governments and entrepreneurs and also citizens themselves actually works all together. And if we can change the C world, maybe we changed all the narrative of the story. What would be your quick comment on this proposal? Andres, maybe we start from you.
That's a nice one. I think this is precisely what we need. It is a shared undertaking at each level. It is an individual, it is the government, it is a business. And also, if we sort of a discussion and points Isabella just made, I think are very relevant, because I think this change in a trend or a change in the mindset has already happened. We are going to be more digital. The customer is going to require from a companies, what is your net zero target date? What is your strategy to get there? I mean, this is how the financing is provided. And we all individually, of course, have an impact, and also we shape. I think the customer power is really important in also shaping how the corporates behave. And if we change this C for collective, is great. We just need to be then sure that collective responsibility is not going to be translated into no responsibility at all. So there has to be an accountability dimension as well. Otherwise, it's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, Ambassador.
Absolutely. And then this becomes even more complicated when we talk about investments abroad, because you usually or often or maybe come into contexts where standards are very different, or part of your job is also to upgrade the standards or to help those countries become more competitive, etc. So absolutely, and what we are trying to do cannot be done without full partnership with the private sector. And full partnership and support for the private sector, because the amount of investment that is needed and the amount of engagement that is needed can be done only collectively.
And Isabella, cloud digital responsibility?
I think it's definitely a common and it's a collective one, and fully by that. I think that this is gonna raise the profile to the point that the minister also made, is the mind shift has happened, but we want to be all together in this and we want to change altogether the direction and bring things forward. The one point that I would make is I think we need a lot of dialogue here, we need a lot of engagement, and we need definitely also accountability that is clearly formulated and can be measured.
Taavi, your last wise advice to us on trusted connectivity?
Maybe just a comment that I think from energy market perspective, I think one of the most important issue that data owned by consumer. The data owned by consumer, not owned by utilities or someone else, but data owned by consumers. If you talk about consumers' empowerment, then definitely this is the key. And I think it starts exactly from this point that the consumer should know how much energy he or she use, from which sources this energy comes from. This is some kind of first hygiene level. The second one, of course, related that is this data is reliable. Because if you talk about renewable energy data, there are still a lot of crap outside that basically this data provided by generators, not correct one. And this is why we provide this guarantee of origin scheme, that we exactly know that, okay, this balance between produced and consumed electricity goes together. We exactly know and this is certified where this electricity or gas comes from, and all those certificates also abolished. Then I think this really give this trust and right incentive. No such greenwash, just to change energy sector behavior and give right investment signals to those energy market participants who really like to invest and generate green energy.
Thank you. We have another many C's. We have cyber, digitalization, common, cloud, consumer. There's a lot of C's we need to use in order to achieve here. I will by that close my panel with the final comment is yes, how we get from the smart connectivity to trusted connectivity by sharing ideas and visions. But not only this, we also have to share values as a conclusion here, and followed by the real actions supported by the political will and the coordination. It has been an honor to host such an inspiring panel. I thank you all very much for participating here. And with this, I would like to end this panel and thank you very much to the audience as well. Thank you.